way the Africans refer to God is the totality of creation itself. Okay? The totality of creation itself means everything that exists, including you, makes up what is God in the African mind. You're nothing more than an aspect of God having your peculiar experiences as a part of the greater whole. The consciousness of that relationship that makes you spiritually aware. See, what the white man has done is dumb us down, and he's cast God in his image so that we see God only in the context of a white man's possibilities. That's not an African notion of God. You've got to tell it often enough. They didn't know what they know now until somebody told it over and over again. All religion is nothing but a path to understanding divinity. And divinity is nothing but a knowledge of cosmology and ecology and your relationship to it and its relationship to you. I mean, most human bodies break down to over 400 elements and minerals. Every one of those elements and minerals can be found in the rest of the cosmology and the rest of the ecology. So you have diamond in you, you have gold in you. Okay, you have manganese in you, you have iron in you, you have tungsten in you. You don't think the iron in you talk to the iron in the ground? Or let the manganese in you talk to the manganese in me? The only reason we don't understand because we embedded in white people's ignorance, you know? So we don't know how to make relationships no more. Even when it happens, when you meet a woman, like when you met your wife, something attracted you to her. It wasn't just her looks. It wasn't just desire for sex. Something, because there was a bunch of other women around who you could have been attracted to. Something attracted you to her, and something attracted her to you. And that's what you've got to find. See, when you find that thing, that's when you find the God in you, and you find the God in her. See, it's the God in you that recognizes the God in your mate. And that's when you become one. Seek knowledge, and then teach the knowledge you have. But be willing to learn, and be willing to say, the one thing I know is how much I don't know. And then open yourself up to know more than you knew before. We need to just learn how we are. We are an old people. And it is likely that the civilization in the Nile Valley is not 5,000 years old. It may prove to be over 800,000 years old, with some new information that's come out about the age of the Sphinx. Well, if the Sphinx is 800,000 years old, just to get to the consciousness to build such a thing, you had to be around civilizing for a couple of 100,000 years. And so we're an extraordinary people who've been here for an extraordinary long time doing some extraordinary thing. Now we're getting our behinds whipped because we've forgotten who we are. And we're busy trying to be the thing that is kicking our behinds. Now, the way to defeat our enemy is to stop being our enemy. Kill the enemy within, and the enemy without dies. It's that easy. And that's why it's important to have the knowledge that we are trying to bring to one another, me to you and you to me, every day. So we can grow our families, grow our neighborhoods, grow our community, grow our nation, grow our race back to what it should be. Talk about the God, deity, and Kemet like they were white people having this conversation. They didn't talk about it that way. Language, Kemet, the language of Kemet is just like any other language in Africa. So what we're doing is kind of in error. We're calling these things gods. They did not. These are elements and forces of nature. Shu is the wind. Geb is the earth. Nut is the elements in the skies. They're not talking about gods. They're talking about integral aspect of the totality of divinity. And that each of these aspects has a function that makes up divinity. Divinity is every and all things at once, including you. And that's all they're saying. To understand this is to become wise. You know, not to understand this is to remain a slave. If you listen to my tapes, you gotta remember, I've been speaking for 50 years. Yes. I'm talking 50. I've been giving lectures and teaching for 50 years. So I'm not new at this. I've walked with Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Dr. Carruthers, Dr. Hilliard. Before them, I walked with Kwame Ture and Rap Brown, the Secor brothers in the Black Panther Party. Before them, I walked with Adam Powell and Sunni Malik and Sonny Carson and Brother Willie Stocks. And so I've been out here like a long time, and I've been blessed by the ancestors and the gods that I'm still here. And if anything I got that's worth anything and that I can give to you, I'm giving. Don't mean I don't make mistakes. I got a lot of stuff wrong, but I think I also got a lot of stuff right. I will make mistakes because I'm human. I have emotional response like you. I get pissed off like you. I get it wrong like you sometimes. But the one thing I will not do, I will not stand down nor stand back. And so years ago, I made this statement, maybe 30 years ago, that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are mere fragments from the periphery of the African cultural and spiritual system. And so I'm still making that statement, that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are fragments from the periphery of the African spiritual and cultural system. And what I mean by fragments, these are religious formations. Religion, the word means to bind back. And so you have to ask the question, what is it they're trying to bind back to? They're trying to bind back to a body of information that our ancestors put together, learned from the universe on how to govern ourselves so we live together in a civilized social manner. Okay? That's what this is all about. And being able to control the economic, politics, and culture and the environment that we're in. And at the same time, being able to build for tomorrow, build for eternity, so our children and our grandchildren will have the opportunity to advance their lives, provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for themselves, live in a harmonious relationship with one another, and don't destroy the ecology and the environment that they were living in. That's what these religions and philosophies and stuff are supposed to be teaching the human being in terms of behavior. And so once we get that straight and understand what it is we're talking about and move away from the personality cults and move away from the worshiping of human beings as gods, and begin to understand that what we are trying to do is learn and implement principles in our daily lives, both in our personal lives, in our family life, in our extended family life, and our greater social and cultural lives. And once we get that clear, it's easy to look around and see what the fragments and pieces are. Once you've learned your history and you know how your whole body looks like, you'll know what a finger from your body looks like when you see it. You'll know what a foot from your body looks like when you see it. You'll know what a footprint from your body looks like when you see it. And so these other instruments of socialization that we call religion are mere fragment, philosophical and ideological and spiritual fragments from the periphery of the African spiritual system. And so today I'm going to be looking at just more a survey. It's not that in-depth, a history of Christianity in Africa before the transatlantic slave trade, actually before the Catholic Church, all right, which people think is the mother of the churches, and before the Eastern Orthodox Church. Before any of these churches existed, what we are now calling Christianity in terms of form and belief existed in Africa for many, many, many thousands of years. So when we try to look at this thing called Christianity in ancient Africa, remember the term Christianity is a new term. It got applied around the 10th century A.D. Prior to that, nobody called this thing Christianity. Even at the 10th century, it was just beginning to get called that, and it didn't catch on until much later. But what they were talking about was African metaphorical teachings about ideas, principles, and concepts of how human beings should live and relate to the universe and relate to the rest of the ecology and environment that we live in. How we learn from the universe, how we learn from that ecology, and how we learn from that environment. And what we do to create a future for ourselves as we reproduce ourselves as our children. So let's go into the slide. Let me make sure I got this working right. If I get to slide one, then I know we on. Okay. So we know we on. Now, I put this one up because I wanted to show all of these symbols of religions. Whenever you go around the world, you see the Baha'i, you see the Buddhist and the Buddhist posture, you see the Buddhist wheel, you see the cross for Christianity, you see what they call the fish for Christianity, which is really a symbol of a vagina, which was used in the ancient Tigris-Euphrates system long before Christianity. We see the symbol for Confucianism. We see the symbol for the Judaic system, the Shinto Japanese system. Again, we see the Star of David or the dog star out of Kemet for the Judaic system. We see the Hindu system, Islamic system, the Sikh system. Everybody's symbol for their system is there except the African symbol for their system. And I contend that the African symbol for what we are talking about, that we call our spiritual system and our religion, the African symbol is a man, a woman, and a child. A man, a woman, and a child, who we call in ancient Kemet Asar, Aset, and Haru, who the whites have misunderstood, misrepresented, miscopied, called Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And so that symbol of man and woman and child represent the continuity of life. You cannot have life unless you have two opposite sex that have an intercourse, and a sperm and an egg is passed, and you produce a replication of yourself, which is your eternity, because that is your future, and that must be constantly replicated in every generation in order for life to go on. And so that, as far as I can see, is the symbol that we projected to represent the greater part of how we understood reality. Now, if you look, now this is a writing system that's older than any other writing system in the world, except the ones down in ancient Sudan and in the Great Lakes area, out of which this one comes. And so, look here, the cross. Thousands of years before Christianity, there's the cross, which they claim they use as a symbol because of Jesus' dying. So just this one photograph shows that that whole concept is a fraud. So just to kind of get you started, so you can look with your eyes and see things, simple little things, that people sort of like think they can say it because we don't have any information. But once you get a little bit of information, you go like, oh, something's wrong with that picture. And then we come here, the pyramid text, the oldest written religious text in the world. At least the oldest written religious text known to the world, because they just entered the Great Mount in Sudan, the Great Temple Mount in Sudan, and they found a whole nother set of writing there that precedes and predates these writings, and I'm pretty sure that they were religious writing. But to us to date, the oldest known text is this one in the tomb of Eunice. But even here, it wasn't new. This was somebody repeating an older text. And so in this text, what the Europeans call the book of Genesis, much of the elements of what they call the book of Genesis is found in this text. Okay? And in this text, you find God saying, I created myself out of myself. I caused existence to exist so that I might exist. And then this God, who is called Amun, that which is unknown, then says, I hicker. And when he hicker means to vibrate. It means the same thing as the word. And I hicker and I produce others. So he produces Ptah. But look at Ptah now. No, first he produces Ra. Now Ra is symbolized by the sun. That means energy. And then he produced Ptah. Ptah is symbolized by a mountain. That means matter. So now I've produced matter and energy. And he came into being out of Nun, which is water. So now you got water, you got matter and energy. And in Nun, the Nun out of which this God arrives is black and in darkness. So now you got darkness, but with Ra, you now got light. So out of the darkness into the light. So just like David looked at it later and said, let there be light. He says, I hicker and I created these. And then he said, I cough up Shu and I spat out Tefnut. Shu means the air. Tefnut means the moisture. And then Shu and Tefnut, which is female and male, positive and negative, would produce twins. Those twins would be called the earth and the skies, or the heavens, Geb and Nut. And then Geb and Nut would then give birth to the first humans. Then we're talking about Asar, Aset, Set, and Nephthys, and on. So that Genesis story that they're using is our Genesis story. Okay? So that's what I mean when I say they are fragments from the periphery of our tradition. And then when God got through making everything, our God, meaning Amun, or whatever name we call him, Atum, whatever names are just descriptions of something, descriptions of characteristics of behavior. And then it says, having done all these things, having created all that my heart desired, I then expanded in it, which means everything that is also not only of me, but is me. So we are indeed, according to our tradition, God, the divine, having the human experience. Or more clearly put, we are expressions of aspects of the divine essence having the human experience. And this is what I was talking about. In the beginning, there's Nun, the primal waters, which one might even refer to as liquid matter. And then out of it will arise a tomb. And a tomb would be that unknowable factor that caused things to come into being. And then would arise a tomb Ra, meaning the light, the energy, the radiation. And out of it would give birth to Shu and Tefnut, air and moisture. And then the air and the moisture and the energy would then give birth to what we call the earth, all of the mineral resources that make up things, and Nut, the sky, meaning all of the elemental planets that's up there. And these will give birth to Nephthys, Osiris, Isis, and Set, who would then give birth to Ra, Hathor, Horus, Anubis, and so forth, meaning the human beings would come forth from the elements of the earth and the energies of the sky. So all of what we put forth in our creation story is what they would copy in their creation story. So when they talk about Adam, Adoma, they're talking about Geb. They're talking about the earth. And when they're talking about Eve, they're really talking about Nut. Adam means earth, ground, the minerals. And Eve means life, the energy force that come about as a result of the minerals in this earth.
But why is it so hard for our people to really understand that? It's a great
Because
this story.
I know, but because we have to get familiar enough with it. I'm just getting familiar with it. I've been reading about this stuff for years, but I've been glossing over because Dr. Ben was teaching us. I didn't need to know it. I just listened to Doc. Now I'm watching brothers like Brother Reggie and others who have mastered this body of information. And so I'm trying now to catch up with the youngsters and trying to learn and understand it so I can explain it. Oh, yeah, I'm Roscoe, some bad dudes. So I'm trying now I always knew it instinctively, but now I'm trying to look at it in detail so I can tell those of you who are listening to me, do the study, do it in details, and find out what each of these things mean. So they're not people. They're not gods walking around with animal heads. Those are metaphorical representation of ideas, principles, and concepts. Let me say that again. Osiris walking around as a mummy, being dead. There's no dead dude walking around with his dick pointing out. That's a symbol of a concept and a principle that is alive in every human being. Osiris is every human being. Set is every female human being. You understand? The children, their children are their qualities and attributes. Anubis, Haru, and so forth. These are the quality and attributes of what every human being is capable of expressing. So let's go on. The Per Em Haru, the book of the coming forth by day, or what the whites call the Egyptian book of the dead. This is chapter 17. And I put this in because I wanted to show, I'm in Prince Hall Masons. People always jump and say, oh, the Masons, this and that. Stop listening to your ideas about white masonry that you've learned from white folks who hate white masonry. Go do your own research and find out what masonry is all about and where did it come from. And this symbol right here with the lion, leopards facing in different directions, this is just a concept that symbolizes yesterday and tomorrow. And the light in the center, Ra, represents today. That symbol is at the center of the Freemasonic teachings, which come out of Kemet, not out of England, not out of France, not out of the Knights Templars. The Knights Templars and them steal this body of information from us and bring it back to Europe and repackage it like they've done Christianity, Judaism, and other things. This I put up, the Book of the Coming Forth by Day. Is very important to see this little piece here. There's a lot in this papyrus. It's a fantastic papyrus. It has so much in it. But the little piece I was concerned with was to show you, brother, this is the papyrus of Ani. Brother Ani has passed away. This is his soul, his Ba, being watching his spirit being weighed. This is the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth. This is his heart being weighed. His heart meaning his deeds, how he lived, how he spoke, how he acted, how he behaved on this earth, being weighed, the energy that that has produced is what is being weighed against a feather. And that feather had better be lighter, mean heavier, than the energy that you produce on this earth. Because if you produce negative energy, it will be weighty. If you produce good energy, good character, good behavior, it would be light. And so you have Anubis, the human body, and the jackal, the dog head. Now, there was no man in ancient Kemet that had a dog head. This is a symbol, because the jackal was a dog that represented judgment. I mean, he would bury his meats in the ground and stuff and let it rot until it got just tender enough for him to go and dig up and eat and digest, so it would do him some good. So he was referred to as the greatest symbol of judgment. So that's why he's using as the judge of the character of this man. And so here we've got this other person keeping a record, Tahuti. There's no person in the ancient Kemet with no bird head. There's a bird called the ibis bird. And that bird, as it searched for worms in the marshland, it looks like it was writing. It leaves, if you see it today, look like they carry, like they're writing a whole letter. So it became the symbol of how we carry on calligraphy or writing. And so the human is recording the result of this man's character being judged against the principles that the society calls ma'at. That is the standard by which everybody should behave.
So, Professor,
you see,
and looking at this and then listening to you, my brother,
mm-hmm.
we, as African people, we look towards nature to give us the answer to things. We also look at signs of the animals that
right.
We learn from the animals and we watch them.
Right. You know? Nature is not our enemy. That's the white man is at war with nature. The African is a part of nature, and that's why the white man is at war with the African. Nature is, and the cosmos is our dictionary, our encyclopedia, our Bible, our holy book. We imitate it because it is the perfection of creation, so that we can be in tune with that perfectional function. And what the whites did, they would steal, and then this guy I got here, the hippopotamus, the lion, and the crocodile. Well, if you were on the bad side of things, you went here. This is what the white man calls hell, you know, in his literature. But I'm calling him now the district attorney. And I'm calling this brother the court recorder. And I'm calling this brother the judge. And I'm calling, you know, the brother who's bringing Mr. Ani through his attorney. And what we're seeing up here is the 12 jurors sitting in judgment. And then what we see in the laws of Ma'at here is the laws by which people are being judged. So what I'm saying is that this is the American and the Western legal system stolen right from one page of our book, and they don't even give us credit for it. And it's right in front of our face, and we can't see it. They use our scale of justice. They use our Lady Ma'at as justice. They use her bandana from around her head to put over her eyes, and we still don't get it. They've taken our whole system and make us think we don't have nothing, and they've got this great democracy and this great legal apparatus that we need to learn from, when it's nothing but a fragment from the periphery of your system. The Coffin Text is the third oldest written holy book. Again, this is us, and I wanted people to be clear. Here, the priest and the priestess, and they just black as they can be.
So, Professor Smalls, I'm sorry to keep cutting you off, but I want to give our people a good and clear sight. Where were the Hebrews?
There was no such thing. They don't.
Where were the Moors?
There's no such thing.
Okay.
There was no Christianity, there's no Moors, there's no Hebrews, there's no Islam, there's none of this stuff. No, not at this time. That's what I'm saying. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is fragments from the periphery of this practice that we had going on hundreds of thousands of years before they stumbled on the scene.
The Hebrews was not in Kemet? They was not in Egypt?
They're nowhere in our history. They're nowhere to be found. And we have the best kept history in the world to date, and the best preserved history in the world to date. And how would we not preserve something as extraordinary as the event they claim took place? So I try not to give too much credence to it other than to say these people stole fragments from the periphery of this system. You see the priest with his leopard skin. You remember when I did Dr. Ben, I tried to simulate some leopard skin over my white robe. So, and here's the priestess with the leopard skin. And they're coming to consecrate the mummy, the symbol of the body having been dead and is now being preserved for posterity. And this is another page from the coffin text. So we have the pyramid text, we got the coffin text, we've got the book of the coming forth. This is the 11th hour of the book of Gates. This is the 4th oldest holy written books. Now, these are all of our holy books written. There is no Bible yet. There is no Torah yet. There is no Quran yet. And here's all of these texts that we have written talking about life, talking about time. If you would count these, you would see we were already into the 24 hours. We were into the 12-hour cycle. We were already into the 365 plus days of the year. We were already studying the stars, studying the relationship between the stars and other things here on Earth, studying the relationship between man and energy from around the cosmos, our interrelationship with life and death. We realized that there was no such thing as death, that we both matter and energy and neither can be destroyed. We knew that way back then. We knew that when we had our babies, that we did not have babies. We simply recreated ourselves as an extension of ourselves. So each child that comes out of a human being is that human being deposited themselves into the future. That's our culture. Again, from the Book of Gates, another page. I just want to show we had these books. Another second from the Book of Gates. I'm not going to go into the detail. And this, when we talk about the primordial waters of Nun, they use this symbol of a human being as water to symbolize the waters of Nun. The waters of Nun is that thing out of which all things come into being. And in the Book of the Coming Forth by Day, our God, Creator Force, said, and having created everything in the world and having then deposited